Helps the ambiance.
It does. I noticed you guys didn't even have on the lights last time.
Welcome to the Grappling with Podcast.
Kept it down.
Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker
super
will take
creepy.
a deep dive
You
into
wanted it
topics
moody.
covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management.
When you
Our
have someone
mission
that's
is to provide the
recovered from
latest
AIDS,
science-based
like Nikita.
information to help you get the most out of your
Just keep it
grappling
down,
journey,
you know?
both on and off the mats,
Sensitive to
and help
light.
you overcome any challenges you may be grappling
Day
with.
Walker.
Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Please seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. I make bad jokes. I say silly things, and I don't mean any of it. Don't hold me or my family or friends accountable, please.
That's a good one, Bill.
Thank you.
Wow.
Send emails to the Hardys.
That's
Stanford
amazing.
Integrative Medicine. And
Don't, please don't. Here we go.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well,
What's
I
going
know-
on, you big bag of bones?
what's going on is although
Your new name's Lazarus.
yeah, because I came up like the Undertaker.
Yeah, you're just back from the dead.
Yeah, you pronounced me dead last time, and I was like, I'm not quite dead yet.
We got so many more followers. It was crazy.
I know that's BS because I'm watching them.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed they trickled when I wasn't here. Yeah, it wasn't good. I had respiratory pestilence. It was not fun. Put
What
me down
is-
for a long time.
I thought pestilence is what we spray on our veggies and stuff in farms.
No.
Yeah?
Are you really asking me with that open mouth freaking? Are you sure?
Pesticide, honey.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah,
What's the difference?
pestilence.
Yeah. Do you know?
It's something you're afflicted with. Yeah, do I know? I wouldn't have used the word.
Well, that's not true.
Think of like locusts.
Like
That's
the-
more like a
the
plague,
bug.
Well, but that's pestilence, isn't it?
I guess.
Now you're really confusing me.
It's okay. I was
So you
sick.
had a low form of bug?
Now Libby's gonna look it up. I was sick. Yeah, with a virus,
Okay.
a respiratory virus, and it wasn't a fun one.
You doing good now?
I'm about 70% back with my cardio.
So
my
you're
lungs.
still dodging me on the mats?
No, I wanted to roll with quality people. I rolled with a bunch of black belts today instead of you.
That's rude.
Well, if I only have 70%, I at least want to get some good rolls, and I don't want to slum.
I'm going to just say
Stinks.
pestilence,
Yeah.
also synonyms, plague,
Cinnamon?
Yeah.
Oh, plague.
the
Okay.
pest.
Fair enough.
Pesticide.
That's not it.
No. So, no, I think by the time at the end of class, I was kind of done.
Yeah, I get it.
So I
You're
thought
teaching your ducklings in the corner too half the time.
I was teaching my ducklings, right? Yeah,
I seen it.
it's I'm spreading the cult.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be duck patches everywhere before.
So this little low form of HIV that you just got over, we're going to talk about this a little bit, like training, working out, whether it's jiu-jitsu or just working out in general.
We could call the episode "Do What I Say, Not What I Do,"
Okay. Very
because
good.
I think that's a big reason why I've had multiple. You probably recall back, Carrie and I were gonna go to ADCC. I got sick back in September. I got sick again here the last couple of weeks. So there's, we're going to talk about maybe perhaps why and maybe what you should do when you're training during cold and flu season.
When you have the immune system of an infant.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. Well, I have some theories on why that's happened. I pulled up some medical literature too, talking about exercise and respiratory tract infections too, to kind of see what the latest is out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it have to do with stuff like Ken Pinion and all that?
Like what?
You know who Ken Pinion is?
No.
Enumclaw. For the people at home, just Google Ken Pinion Enumclaw, and then you'll understand that Chris has just an issue with.
Wait, hold on.
Is this like an Easter egg or something to find later?
Well,
Does it
yes,
have to do with animals?
it does.
Like you're a fucking piece of shit. I'm just going to say that right now because I think you are a piece of shit, even though I don't even know why yet.
I believe the medical term is perforated colon.
My gosh, Bill.
No, you're. I'm still a little wheezy too. So it's gonna make me laugh now. You have to use an inhaler. So
Look at this.
I have it right here. Yeah. I'm not playing around, dude.
You're like a gangster with that.
Yeah, it's something else.
Gat.
Concealed carry for that sucker. Yeah, during this time of year, it's interesting. Jiu-jitsu itself, we're very close contact with each other. I think most academies are pretty good about policing themselves. You don't come in with snotting all over the place and hacking and coughing, right? People just kind of self-isolate a little bit from training.
A little bit, but there is, especially pre-Voldemort, I think people were a little loosey-goosey for sure with
100%.
With I just want to train or
Yeah, it just
people I think are a little bit better, at least right now.
They are a bit better, and it's just good for your training partners to look out for them if you're feeling a little rough and you're gonna push through. Go do something by yourself.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Do you think there was a rebound effect at all, as far as viruses and the amount of people getting sick because of the lockdown? You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a theory behind that. It's called immunity gap. We're seeing a lot more sick kids this year with RSV, a lot.
Because you're at a big clinic, so you're able to see a lot, and then obviously Carrie, she has a lot of family practice.
Yeah, she actually is exposed to them. I'm upstairs from where our urgent care is, so but you still, you're still the same building. What a theory has been put out is that with all the lockdowns, especially those kids that are most at risk for RSV, which can be dangerous to infants. 0 to 6 months, especially. During the time when kids are developing, they're kind of tuning their immune system. They're getting exposed to things. I've talked about this in the past. That's why, parents that are really gotten a little crazy with the sanitizing, they're not doing their kids a good service for developing a strong immune system, right? Because part of the development of the immune system is during those early times where it's kind of building it up at that time. Well, when we were isolated, and people are why isn't that's a good idea, right? Well, the consequence of doing that is that you're kicking the can down the road. And during that time, those viruses are still mutating. And then you're hitting a bunch of kids that really have, they have to come back out into society, then haven't really been exposed to some of those newer strains, and it's hitting them hard right now. And I think the same, and you're seeing a lot of myself, I suspect I had RSV too, which typically hits
what does that mean?
Respiratory syncytial virus. It's a respiratory virus. It typically hits kids, but we're seeing it with older adults too, kind of getting hit pretty hard with these. It goes, as opposed to some of the upper respiratory, RSV typically goes down into the lungs pretty quick. And so it definitely can cause some complications in older folks too,
right.
Yeah. So
we don't got to go there.
But that immunity gap, in other words, we had a time period where we weren't exposed, and now we're getting hit really hard.
Interesting.
So you can think of it as kicking. You're gonna get it. You can't just lock yourself away forever, right? And so there's some consequences to doing things like that for the immune system. So did that answer your question? Yeah. That's kind of one of the theories proposed right now.
I mean, I've been seeing RSV thrown around and heard it, so I just wasn't sure what that even means.
Yeah. But the winter time, especially, we have less sunlight typically, especially in the Northwest. Most people that aren't supplementing vitamin D, their vitamin D levels are down. There's one of the reasons they propose that a lot of these winter viruses are affecting people. People then are indoors too. It's really hard to catch when you're outdoors a lot. You're relatively well protected. When you're indoors, though, you're in a closed environment, and that circulate pretty quickly. So wintertime, you're at higher risk for these type of things anyway. Now, if we bring in exercise to this piece, right? Well, first of all, should I do no exercise? Should I do quote unquote moderate exercise as far as intensity.
When you've caught something, or just in
I'll say
general?
just in general.
Okay, in the winter.
So I'm setting up a kind of a thought experiment here.
Okay.
Or what is the effect of very intense exercise? Okay, which I would suggest that what we do for our sport, for jiu-jitsu, is at least moderate, and oftentimes what most people would consider pretty intense. Breathing real hard. Yeah.
Even if let's say you didn't do sparring after class, but just doing the situational portion,
for sure,
and drilling, you're probably going to have at least a moderate workout.
Because when they talk about, they use words for the general public like moderate and intense. What is moderate to people that are just kind of casual exercisers? Yeah. To us, but to people that do intense stuff, they may not.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm saying. You might not think it is quite as intense.
Sure.
So this has been exercise, and the susceptibility to respiratory infections has been studied a lot in marathon runners because it's a prolonged. It's really hard on the body. I mean, it's those prolonged endurance events, right? It's kind of in that community, you see a lot of people in the wintertime that are training hard like that and putting in those long hours of training become pretty susceptible to getting respiratory infections. So the scientists started looking into, okay, what's going on there type of thing. And should you really back off your exercise, or what should you do if you're really worried about, catching these things, or if, so, the bottom line is what they found is, not exercising is not only is it not protective, it actually can lead you more vulnerable as far as your immune system goes. If you're a sedentary person, they found that what quote unquote moderate exercise is actually somewhat protective. And there's some reasons we'll go into some of what the theories are behind that. Whereas very intense or prolonged exercise can actually leave you more susceptible. So it's like a J curve where you think the top point of the J here is your sedentary. Your risk is a little higher as far as going up. If you look at an X and Y axis, your sedentary person is at the top of the J here. Then you go down to moderate exercise, so you're less vulnerable, and then you go back up again quite a bit as you go and push the intensity. So what do you do? So I would argue, without getting too bogged down in the terminology of what is moderate and what is intense, I would suggest.
Are those the only two classifications?
No, I mean, it's just arbitrary, man.
Yeah.
Light, moderate. So this is going to kind of tie back into those episodes we did long ago on the stress cup, the allostatic load, right? Who are you? What's your age? Do you have any other medical problems? Day to day, what's your sleep like? What's your stress like? The whole 9 yards, right? So, to give some kind of recommendations to people. And then I thought we could actually talk about some things that I do when I start to feel like I'm coming down with something. So both preventative and then early intervention, because it's hard to treat these things. I'm not going to give medical advice because everyone has their own situation, and I would have to talk to you individually to actually give you advice. But I'm just going to tell you what I do. Okay. And hopefully that will help some people. So, but that's kind of what I want to talk about. Before I get into it. Do you have a direction you want to go with this, or some other questions?
I know someone. This is barely related, but
here we go.
I was in Vietnam once. No.
That's what Tom said.
So I know a guy. He has. It's almost like when he's doing jiu-jitsu this week, he's been very. Like it's almost like things are not clicking. He didn't say brain fog, but his timing's off. Just everything is off. He typically works out like an animal. Yesterday, he did the CrossFit workout called Murph.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah,
that's a freaking butt kicker.
Right. He did that in the morning.
Did he do it with the weight vest or not?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
And then he went and did open mat with me. he ate 2 full-size Chipotle burrito bowls. So we know who we're talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
But he noticed that, and this has kind of been happening a little bit for the last couple days. But my question is that a sign of maybe overdoing it?
For sure.
Where you're having that mental
it's the nervous system
performance disconnection.
So someone like that, not picking on him, because, I mean, he's a beast. He has the gift of youth. He's in really good shape. But even then, you can still get into these overtrained states. Remember that allostatic load we were talking about? That's an episode that he really would benefit from, because he could, or someone like him could kind of test themselves in the morning. Remember, we talked about some of the things we could do, like the grip strength and all that, and really plan your day around that a little bit. And like, hey, maybe I'm not going to do this crazy, and that is one of the hardest CrossFit workouts as far as just maybe if I'm going to do that, I might just go in and drill.
Sure.
Right, because we know what open mat is like when you're dropping in somewhere. A lot of people are playing their A game, and that's just the nature of it, right?
Yeah.
And so that is definitely a sign of overtraining, which is where I'm going to get to. Is leads, he would be more susceptible if you're feeling like that. You're like, hey, my timing's off. I'm just, my energy's a little low. I don't have, I'm not sharp. That's a sign that your brain's like, hey, man, you need to back off a little bit. Because what's also happening is you're producing high amounts of hormones, stress hormones, especially what we call the catecholamines, like norepinephrine and epinephrine, but you're also producing high amounts of cortisol at the same time. And it can directly impact your immune system and your ability to fight off some of these things.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that would be a good time to, and that's kind of what I want to, that's exactly, you set that up nicely because.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sometimes you do all right. Sometimes. Don't get crazy. But yeah, a situation like that, where you're pushing that into the spectrum where you're much more likely to catch something because of that. And also not recover from it as quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Or run with it.
Yeah. So, when you're doing, let's just do some scenarios here. Let's say it's winter time. I woke up in the morning and
what are you wearing?
What am I wearing? Carrie can tell.
What'd she say? Nothing. Okay.
I'm not a savage. I don't sleep in pajamas.
You don't got that thong on still?
No.
Bullshit.
It's only Friday night, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't go up the crack on Friday. It's a sunga. It's edible.
Okay.
You're blushing.
That's funny.
We're hitting a little too close to home.
Well, So, gosh, man. Now I'm like, where was I on this? So let's say you didn't have a good night's sleep. You're already kind of behind the curve a little bit. Okay. A lot of your immune recharging, regeneration, things like that happen during deep sleep. And then let's say your vitamin D levels are down.
Yeah. It's
wintertime, you're not supplementing, or you don't know your levels. We need to come back and I'll tell you what I think are optimum for immune support for vitamin D. And then you're like, I got to go do an open mat. But first I got to go do some, because I have a program I'm on. A lot of people that are new to jiu-jitsu that have come in with a very strong athletic background or have a hard time adjusting. In other words, they still feel like they got to do that same stuff they were doing before jiu-jitsu and then add it in there. And
there's someone I want to, not by name, but I want to talk about that if we can come back to that at some point.
Absolutely, because that's a recipe for problems long term.
Yeah.
You're going to get overtrained really easily. So you have to kind of then take this new input to your nervous system, which is jiu-jitsu. So it's not only the exercise, it's a lot of motor learning. It's a big input to the nervous system. And you have to adjust what you're doing around there. I would argue for most people in the wintertime especially, if you're new, if you're listening to this and you're just starting and you have like, hey, this is my winter exercise program. I do a lot of heavy weightlifting and all that. you might want to back off for a while and see where you kind of, when you start training on the mats, because you might want to see where you're kind of, how you're recovering, kind of getting some, kind of getting some data on that before. And then like, okay, maybe I'll add this back in and not feel like you got to continue doing everything.
Right.
Okay, that's a real problem. So being able to take an inventory of yourself is really important day to day on this. And I'm very guilty about this because let's just be honest, this martial art is super fun. I mean, it's addicting. Yeah. And when you come into class and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna do some some skill work, maybe some drilling, work on some stuff. All of a sudden,
right,
you've gotten 5 hard rolls.
One person asks you to roll,
and then you get and that's what happened to me. And then I got pretty sick.
Pestilence.
The pestilence, yeah. And I didn't recover well.
Yeah,
I was out for about 12 days. So I could have been a lot smarter, and maybe I still would have gotten something, but I would only lasted for a couple days, right?
Which was a combo of you getting over your HIV and me not having my bomba combined to why we had a week off.
Oh, why we missed a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was no good.
Yeah. We were both a little down in the dirt.
But both of that is a measure of allostatic load, right? And it was actually, we had to recover and get back up from that, because I have a tendency, and I think you do too, and I think a lot of us do, I don't like missing training days.
Yeah.
Right? Those are kind of non-negotiable as far as mat time. And sometimes you have to. And it's hard to do. Like I said, I'm giving advice that I really didn't follow myself, and I really need to get better at doing that. So there's a lot of things that go on. When you do overtrain and you're not sleep, let's say you didn't sleep well and you're training hard, wintertime, and we're around very close contact. Okay, just by doing our sport. The cortisol, especially the hormone cortisol, will have an inhibitory effect on that immune system, and all the things that are supposed to happen to intercept that virus and then create little immune cell clones. I'm not going to get into the T cells and B cells and all that, but to actually fight that off are really impaired. So that's the important. Not only are you more readily going to catch the thing, but the army isn't there like it should be to really fight it off in a quick manner. Okay. And so then you get this, not only do you get sick, but then the sickness is usually prolonged. And so I'm saying this to give you guys some.
Did you try working out during this?
So yeah.
I know you didn't go to the gym, but
I have a really, as you know, I have a pretty good home gym.
And did you push it a little?
So yeah. And I'll tell you, I did one mobility workout with her. It was like kind of the FRS stuff, the end range strength, but nothing super heavy. And I think we even called it a day early. We cut that workout short when I was at that weekend that I was, but I wanted to do something to move. The following weekend, I was like, oh, I'm feeling better. And I did some heavy belt, intense belt squats and stuff like that. And I feel like I almost had a relapse again.
And that's
right?
what pushed you out another 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, it sure did. But that's that little psychopath that's in my head, right? But it's hard not to. I've been much better served with doing some stretching or some sauna or something like that, right? So anyway, but just understand the immune system is compromised. That's the take-home message of that. Not only to prevent you from getting it in the first place, that initial response, kind of the guards at the gate, but then all the things that are made specifically for that invader aren't being made well either and aren't working as well.
I see.
Okay. So that's kind of the background on this, and also, what the science shows is, kind of that moderate exercise. So if you were going to go in I'm just feeling a little tired and run down. I don't have any symptoms or anything, like no runny nose or cough or anything, but I think I'm going to go in today and I'm not going to do any hard sparring. And you really should stick to that. You like get a partner, or they're like, hey, let's work on some stuff or something, right?
I mean, we neglect that kind of stuff so much.
Yeah, we do naturally because rolling's so fun.
Exactly, and the stuff that we. So you're going to do whatever the curriculum is.
Of course,
you should, because your coach or professor or whatever is going to kind of have an idea of how to progress people.
Yeah.
But then naturally, we're going to have things that we are gravitating towards.
Yep.
And whether it's you saw it on Instagram, YouTube, or you randomly hit it, or another person taught you something off outside of class or whatever, but it's stuck with you, and you want to get better at that specific technique. And even Coach Andrew would say, like, you have to work on your own stuff.
Yep.
And what happens is class ends, and then you just start rolling.
That's right.
So basically every opportunity you have to work on that one thing. So then you work on it, but you just work on it during sparring.
Right.
So now you're getting. I'm not saying you need to drill with zero resistance. Like that should be a pretty small window that you do that. You should start doing situational drilling and
of course.
However you classify.
But in this situation,
like, okay, well, let's slow it down and get a ton of reps in whatever that is, that thing that you're trying to get better at. And you'll get better in that one class than you would have doing 5, 6, 7 rounds trying to go for it before you've even done any drilling of the movement.
Right.
So now you're just getting better at doing a move shittily.
You know, it's a great point because your nervous system's already fatigued anyway.
Yeah.
And right? And so I think using those times where you're feeling a little run down, not symptomatic, but a little run down, to say, okay, here's my time, my built-in time to do this, right? Almost like you're giving yourself an excuse to do it.
Right.
Well, it is, right? So that is a hard balance to strike.
Sure.
And
what's this WikiLeaks paper you got here?
no, this is just kind of it's a review article about exercise and respiratory tract viral infections and what the science. Well, I just kind of covered what the science shows that, you know, sitting on your butt's not good. A little moderate, maybe some drilling type stuff, get the heart rate up a little bit, but not till you're exhausted, is probably better because that can actually enhance the immune system.
Okay.
That's the important take-home message of this. But the 5 rounds, 6 rounds of sparring is probably going to end up sending you the other way when you're feeling like this. If there's some viruses around, you're probably going to end up catching something a lot easier.
Can you briefly touch on supplement?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do.
Yeah.
And I can't give recommendations to peoples.
Sure.
So one of the things I always do, especially in the winter, first of all, I get my vitamin D levels checked. And I did those years ago. I kind of know where I run in the summer and where I run in the winter. And then based on that, and it's where you live, how much sunshine do you get, you know. You personally would then figure out how much, do I need to supplement? Or how much do I need to supplement? What I shoot for and what the medical literature is showing more and more with vitamin D, and those of you that haven't listened to, we did a pretty in-depth episode on vitamin D, and when I talked about all this, I shoot for a blood level of 50 nanograms per milliliter. That seems to be the sweet spot for immune function. And I try to make sure, and I kind of know what I need to supplement to get there, around that.
Depending on the season, yeah.
Depending on the season. So that's a preventative thing. And that is hugely preventative for respiratory viruses.
How much do we take of that vitamin D?
Okay, so we were taking 5,000 during the summer, but I've actually, anytime I disperse the pills, like I've been doing at least 10, but I'm pretty sure Bill hasn't upped it.
Is that 2 pills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're taking a D and K2?
Yeah.
Which is, for those of you, I always recommend taking those combo. And if you go back to the vitamin D episode we did, you'll know why we recommend K2 with D. But again, you guys take 5,000 IUs, international units.
On the minimum, yeah.
And that might be good, but I would, if you don't know what that is doing to your levels, I would make sure you guys periodically get some blood work checked just to see, you know, is what you think you're doing, is it actually doing?
So if we're going to do that, would I need to get off of the supplements?
No.
Okay.
You know, you can
How
get
do
your
I know what do I need to take if I'm supplementing?
so what you end up doing is that's where the work is. When you first start doing this, you work with your doc. I think, Carrie, can people do this themselves too? I think they can order labs on certain things online.
Yeah, don't you have to drink your first urine of the day, and then if it's bitter or if it's sweet?
No, you've got to check your poop.
Carrie, check your poop.
If it's tasting really nutty, you need more.
Okay, so nutty taste, you said?
You need more vitamin.
Damn.
Just get your blood drawn.
Oh, that's an option.
Yeah, that's an option. Get the vitamin D level checked. And so
I'll probably opt in for that.
I would do that versus those other things that I don't think are very medically supported.
Yeah, you've never been to Germany.
Actually, I have. I've lived there for 7 years.
Oh, so
There you go. That backfired on you quickly, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
But I could smell it on you.
Yeah. So, but that's important because then at first, then you'll have to, okay, here's my level. Let's say I'm down at 25. And then I'm going to start supplementing 5,000 IUs. Mm-hmm. And then 3 months later, get it checked again and see what that supplementation for 3 months
But that's
has
what I'm
gotten.
saying. So, like,
Yeah.
I've been supplementing for a long time.
Uh-huh.
If I go get tested right now,
Yeah.
how will I know what that 5,000
Because
is doing?
because then you know what your levels are.
When I'm 5,000.
That's right. So if let's say they're 70, maybe that's a little excessive, and maybe you need to do less.
Okay.
And then you would, then cut it down to 2,500 or something.
Okay.
And then you can retest.
Just take that into account.
Yeah. It's where you're at. It doesn't make it because you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And then you know what those levels are and you correlate what you're doing to what your levels are. Right. Just, getting close. But that's what you, in my opinion, shooting for is a really good. That still doesn't, if you act like a knucklehead like me and overtrain, it's still not going to protect you.
Sure.
But it's really effective. And that's been in the medical literature for years. And I don't know why that is not sung from the rooftops of public health,
Right.
how important that is, especially in the Pacific Northwest. That should be, every doctor should be checking your vitamin D up here.
Sure.
Anyway.
Maybe because you can't make a lot of money off of it?
There's, anyway, yeah, probably.
What, any other supplements?
Yep. So when I'm run down, or let's say if I'm around someone that has been sick, I know let's say I'm working with someone directly, especially at work, and they're, obviously coughing.
Yeah. You hear someone sneezing in the hallway or something.
Yeah, and then that feeling, you're like, I don't have any runny nose or cough or anything or fever, but I'm just kind of feeling like
Sure.
look. So I'll go ahead and start to do things like I do. I know there's people will argue about this, but I like to do 3 to 5 grams of vitamin C. Mm-hmm. I like to do elderberry, especially against respiratory viruses. Mm-hmm. They did a study a long time ago against for influenza with elderberry against Tamiflu, which is one of their one of the pharmaceuticals, and they're pretty equivalent as far as their efficacy. I think some later studies have shown, or they tried to show, that it wasn't as good. And I looked at some of the methodology there. I don't know. I didn't think it was a very good study.
Yeah.
It's worked pretty well for me. So I use elderberry syrup.
That's worked really well for me too.
Has it?
When I've started to feel sick.
Yeah, you're supposed to take it at the earliest time of being symptomatic. I don't. But elderberry, unlike Tamiflu, seems to have a little bit of a preventive thing too, where Tamiflu hasn't been shown to really work well. Prevention, in other words, it's cold and flu season, I'm just going to start taking Tamiflu. Yeah, it hasn't really shown to do that. There may be some protective effect prevention-wise for elderberry, but there is, both in the literature and just anecdotally myself, that it seems to work pretty well for shortening duration or severity of symptoms.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So, as having Hashimoto's or thyroid, what is that? Hashimoto's
Thyroiditis. Mm-hmm.
People say if you have that, you shouldn't take elderberry because it might boost your immune system too much when you have a.
So,
I'm just saying that that's
I know.
very common on the internet.
That's nonsense because that's not how it works. Okay, it actually inhibits viral replication. It works against the virus itself.
Okay.
Okay, it has antiviral activity. It's not like this turning you into an autoimmune. So,
Monster wherever
No.
suddenly your body's attacking.
What will increase your risk of autoimmune disease is low vitamin D.
Oh.
Because vitamin D also helps not only help support the strength of the immune system, but it also helps regulate it from getting out of control. If you look at the multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune disease, especially that one, it's present epidemiologically in higher latitudes. Like you see it a lot in the Nordic countries, higher latitudes here, and there's a pretty strong correlation with low vitamin D levels in that. So because what happens with, since you brought it up, these autoimmune diseases, you have your immune system that attacks things, right? Just being very basic with it. You have a subset of cells called T regulatory cells that actually are kind of like bouncers in a bar that will kind of stop a fight. They help kind of tamp down that overactive immune response. When your vitamin D levels are low, you don't have good T regulatory activity, right? And so that you can get kind of an out of control immune response. There's a lot of genetic factors in who is susceptible to. It's not just that, but no, that's a long way of saying that's nonsense with making elderberry, making thyroiditis worse.
It's so common.
Of course it is,
common.
you know.
I see it all the time.
But that's why understanding at least what we know about the mechanisms behind things is important before we start making statements. Excuse me.
So,
okay,
vitamin D,
Vitamin D, elderberry.
vitamin C.
C,
What else do we do?
lozenges.
So yes, the zinc. So one of the things I like to do is, especially early, is I'll get some zinc. I think the lozenges are better because you basically are using them in your oral cavity. That's where respiratory viruses typically take up residence first, is in the nasopharynx, the nose and throat. Excuse me. But I'll do that as well, especially early symptoms. And I'll do that in combination with quercetin. So what quercetin does, it's what's called a zinc ionophore.
Okay, I've tried to explain this.
Okay, so
in my stupid way.
What this is if you look at zinc is a charged ion. Okay, that's redundant. Ions are all charged. In chemistry, zinc has a positive charge on it. These ions, it's difficult to get them through cell membranes where they need to go because that's where the virus is already invaded, right? And it's getting into your cells and it's replicating. To get that zinc through the cell membrane into the cell so it can actually inhibit viral replication is what zinc does. You need something to stimulate that, like an opening, to let it get into the cell. And ionophore is a channel, right, where basically it allows it to open and have a charge thing get into the cell. It's the same idea of what happens with generation of ATP and what's called the sodium-potassium pump. Sodium and potassium cannot get through a cell membrane unless they have a carrier to get them through. Like they'll open up. There's different things to open and close them. Otherwise, they'll stay out because they're charged. Okay, the same thing with this. So quercetin is one of the things. I think hydroxychloroquine is another. Is a zinc ionophore. And green tea extract. So those are three well-known ones.
So if you don't, because a lot of people do not take quercetin with their zinc supplement.
Right.
Are they literally just peeing the zinc out?
So I'm sure it's not an all or nothing thing. Okay. The body usually doesn't work all or nothing because you probably have levels of zinc in your body just from eating. But when I really want to get zinc in, if I want to take extra zinc and make sure it gets where I want it to go, I'll take something like that with there. So quercetin and zinc is something that I definitely
just ensuring the effectiveness of zinc.
That's right.
Going to happen.
Yeah. So I think that works very well.
With zinc, what's the recommended safe dosage because I've read that your
Yeah.
body can only absorb like 13 to 16 milligrams or something, and then after that's what
I didn't do
people
the
have been
lozenge
saying.
once. I did the pill form, and
Yeah.
I didn't eat,
Yeah, that's rough.
and I didn't feel good.
No, that's the biggest thing with zinc. It can make you nauseous. Carrie usually recommends 15 milligrams typically.
15 daily, and then when they're sick, 25 to 50.
So she said 15 daily, and then 25 to 50 when you're sick. Definitely was something.
That's what she would give you.
Yeah.
Wait, so 15 daily during the cold and flu season, or just
Daily.
year round?
Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. A lot of people are zinc deficient too. A lot of us are mineral
Well,
deficient
so how do you
anyway.
have? Because I heard with zinc it can also offset copper. So do you have to worry about
That's
that
why.
balance?
Well,
That's why you keep it at those low.
Okay.
that's right, and that's why you also having a multivitamin is a good way to go.
Okay, because it'll have copper in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of those are around 15 milligrams.
That's right.
Okay.
Most of those are around 15 milligrams.
Yeah, that's what Carrie's saying. Thank you for repeating what Carrie's saying. We're listening to what she's saying. But yet that you don't have to get super complicated with it. There are other herbal antivirals. Carrie, off the top of your head, do you have some that you recommend that are super effective? Because unlike antibiotics, and this sounds like a basic thing, but a lot of people still think they should treat viruses with antibiotics. Mm-hmm. Right? And people are always asking for things like that.
Sure.
I actually had to get on an antibiotic because I set up a secondary bacterial infection in my lungs.
This last go around.
Yeah. So it wasn't a
Well,
bronchitis.
and
And September.
when you missed
And
the
September.
ACC.
I sure did. But in general, antibiotics don't do a darn thing to viruses, right? So there's not a lot on the doctors, on our little armament to go after it. Do you have some herbal stuff that you like, Carrie?
Astragalus is always good.
So Carrie's saying astragalus.
Yeah, I like that one. And
Yeah.
And that's a supplement that you can
Yeah, it is.
pick up like
You sure can.
in any store.
Yeah, but with all this stuff, remember these supplements and herbal things, they're still chemicals, right? And this is just general information. Some of these things will interact with some medications some people are taking. You gotta be real careful with this. I'm just giving just kind of picking her brain because she does this all the time.
General
I always
things that-
Google contraindications
Yeah.
for medication. Anything I'm taking, I'm like, does this
Super
interact
smart.
with this?
There's a whole database on herbal interactions too.
She always catches me when I'm about to like cross stuff. And she's
Yeah.
like, no.
Let me
Yeah.
just double check and make sure there's
For
no
sure,
interaction.
it's always a great idea.
Yeah.
But we don't have to get crazy with. But that's the big thing.
Okay, so if you are gonna start going down the zinc, I mean, it sounds like just doing daily low dose of zinc at 15 milligrams ish is going to be good, like just as a preventative.
Most people need it anyway for proper because it does
so
a lot.
Quercetin as well daily.
So no, I don't, because you're using zinc has a lot of other functions in the body as cofactors for enzymes, all kinds of different things that it is needed for in the body. What she's saying is because our soils are over farmed, they're mineral depleted. A lot of us are deficient in these trace minerals. And you'll hear doctors say all the time, "Oh, if you just eat a good balanced diet, you can get all this stuff." No, you can't. Not anymore, right? And so I definitely recommend.
Thanks, Bill Gates.
I recommend a really good, a high quality multivitamin, and which will have zinc, copper, and trace minerals, boron.
Is there any
Quercetin.
particular brands that you guys
Yeah,
recommend?
I thought we went over.
Brands of multivitamins?
Well, no, what to look for
Oh, yeah.
Like
on
medical-
how you know something's a high quality vitamin versus not. I usually look at the B vitamins in it, and I can tell almost instantly if it's a good one or a bad one because of the form of B vitamin in there. Are they methylated or are they not? Right.
Methylated's good.
Yep.
Okay.
And but anyway, we can at some point I can pull out a label and we can.
Maybe you can show how to read one of those things.
Yeah, I think that'd be a
good.
great idea actually.
Short answer is Thorn has a good one.
Thorn.
Okay, Thorn.
And Pure Encapsulation.
Yeah, Thorn with an E at the end. Pure Encapsulations is really good.
These are the brands.
Price, and because they're all third-party tested, good manufacturing process, all the facilities are made in are inspected, and the third party comes in and they'll take random samples and just make sure what they say is in it, and nothing else. So pure encapsulations, Thorn, and if a little bit more pricey is Designs for Health. Those are all high quality.
Amazon.
Yep.
Yep.
The unfortunate thing about Designs for Health is that I think you've got to take 4 of them.
Oh, okay.
I'm a bit tired of taking so many.
So
So
what Carrie is saying is a lot of times with Designs for Health, you end up taking multiple capsules. I actually have their, yeah, you're right. I'm conflating. I think the vitamin I'm taking right now is pure encapsulations, and it's a 1, and it works really. It's great. So I really like that one.
Okay.
But anyway, so the zinc, what she's saying is you should get that in a multivitamin because it's important. But when you need extra zinc because your body's going to tear through it during an infection or try to, a viral infection, you need to supply it with more of it, and then give it quercetin or some other zinc ionophore to make sure it gets into the cells. Right?
Can I just skip all that and just take some D-ball?
D-ball.
It's a steroid.
Oh.
Shoot it right in my butt.
You could. It's not going to do anything for your illness.
Really?
Okay.
It wouldn't boost me up a little bit?
So,
No.
okay. Going back to circling back, because you said something, but then we kind of like moved on.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm understanding
Yeah.
is during cold and flu season,
Yep.
don't do hard, heavy sparring rounds.
Nope.
No,
that's not what I'm saying.
No.
It's not what I'm saying.
You said
Don't put that black
do
magic on us.
You didn't even say if you at first said if you're feeling under the weather, and then you said just during this time of the year.
No. Yeah. So, and this is the problem with this.
Playing with the dark arts.
No, that's good though. So to be very clear, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying you got to watch overtraining. So if you have the example I was trying to use is if you have a bad night of sleep, so already your stress cup, so to speak, is high. You have you did a crazy CrossFit workout, and then you want to go to open mat, right? I'm just saying that together, where in the summertime you may just feel like crap for a couple of days afterwards. Like, oh gosh, I really overdid that. I'm super tired and sore. We're doing something like that during this time will lead you susceptible to a respiratory infection a lot more.
What if you're like, typically you eat fairly healthy. Typically you live fairly healthy. And then you just go on a bender. You just turn into this fat, sloppy Hawaiian. And then...
Why's it got to be Hawaiian?
And then... You put on a couple extra LBs to the form about 15 in a week. In a week period. And then,
dude,
is this dangerous? Are we playing with like diabetes or?
No.
You're playing with something.
You're playing with something. If you continued that type of thing,
I'm playing with my food.
Whatever. Yeah, I know who you're talking. We're gonna team up on you. So, no, you're just not gonna feel. It's like a fine-tuned engine. All of a sudden, you put bad gas in for a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a little sloppy.
Yeah, for a bit.
Yeah.
Now, if you kept that behavior up and kept gaining weight and kept doing that, of course, and you're going to be at risk for metabolic
maybe an
disorder.
intervention in the next month or something if it continues.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he'll be a bag of ass.
Big old bag of ass.
I don't know why, but when you were talking about that description,
Yeah.
it reminded me of Weird Science.
Which part?
What's the older brother's name? Turns into like a weird goblin.
Yeah. Oh, Chet.
Chet?
That was Bill Paxton in his
Yes.
early acting days.
Oh.
You look like a Chet.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
Okay. Is that?
Yeah,
That's
man.
what you
So
got.
just really think
Good
back
stuff.
on that episode about the stress cup.
Liv, can you figure out what episode Stress Cup was, so we can tell them what number.
Yeah, because that's even more important to follow during the wintertime. I think we could sum the whole episode up with that.
Sure.
So, and I'm not very good about doing that sometimes.
Well, to come back to I wanted to circle back to
Yeah.
someone about so they've started jiu-jitsu. They come from lifting 5 days a week. Typically, they're doing what sounds like hypertrophy style workouts. They're very sore after working out.
Got it.
They're like obliterated.
Like, we're going to failure, that type of thing.
I think so.
Okay.
Not CrossFit style, but
got it.
like, yeah. But now they're training. Now their focus is like, man, I want to just like, they like lifting. They like love it.
Yep.
But they want to work out so it helps their jiu-jitsu. So they're training 3 times, 4 times maybe a week. Jiu-jitsu. They want to maintain lifting 5 days a week.
Yeah, that's a recipe for problems.
But they love,
I get it.
they're love both.
I got it. But you're going to have to compromise because you got to ask yourself, what is your goal with this? What is important to you? That you're going to burn down doing that. There's just no way. That's not sustainable.
Like our Murph friend.
Yeah, it's just not. And then you're going to start being tired, and you're going to feel like what happens. The worst thing you can do with overtraining is the mental effects it has. And if you start feeling like a desire not to train when you're usually like all about it, that's one of the primary. We actually did a whole episode on overtraining.
Sure. A lot of time it's not even overtraining. It can be other things, right? Lack of sleep.
Totally. Under recovery, whatever you want to call it.
Under recovery,
Yeah, for sure. So a person like that, and I get it, right? Because that's what I was getting. When you're used to doing something, and all of a sudden like, oh, this is awesome. I mean, Carrie and I were doing a bunch of rock climbing at a gym before we started jiu-jitsu with all the grips and all that stuff, and that went by the wayside real quick.
Yeah.
Right? And we haven't done it for years now. But we can take that person and say, okay, you have to have a very frank conversation with them. It's like, what are your goals here with this? What is your end goal? If they want to be excuse me, gosh, if they want to be a bodybuilder, then you really need to stick with what your true goal is, and you have to be honest with yourself what that goal is. If you just want to be in good, strong, and be in shape, now that you really love jiu-jitsu, have what you're doing accentuate that, that's a whole different thing. It's a whole different way to train. You're going to have to completely change the way you're training too.
Yeah, whatever protocol or you're doing.
Yeah, and we talked about that in an episode, the strength training for
Which I think was like maybe episode 2 or something.
Yeah, it's important to listen to. A lot more in-range strength training, like the FRS, knees over toes type of stuff, because not only can you get strong in these positions, because when you start doing jiu-jitsu, you're in positions you've never been in before, trying to move from.
Sure.
Right? And to prevent injury and also enhance your game, you need to get strong in those positions. There are certain ways to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's not your traditional split routine bodybuilder workout.
Sure.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. Yeah. It's just not optimum. And the training volume is way too much. You can't do 5 days of lifting and now add 3 to 4 days of jiu-jitsu.
I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But if you're going to lift and do jiu-jitsu in the same day,
Yep.
which one's first? Or does it matter?
Yeah, it matters. Because remember skill acquisition?
Yeah.
It depends on what you're doing that day in jiu-jitsu. Especially if you're new and you're trying to learn these motor patterns, and then you've kind of burned your nervous system down a little bit earlier
you did
in
like
the
a
day.
morning workout or
Yeah.
something.
Remember, that wasn't too long ago we did that episode where you'll have a 2-day carryover from that where your skill acquisition, motor skills is not. We talked about that was the warm-up episode.
Yeah.
But they've shown that even for a couple days afterwards, your skill acquisition, getting those motor patterns, and is compromised.
So especially if you're new and you're really learning movements and stuff like that, probably weight training after.
Yeah, and
not
really
before.
think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it, and why are you doing it then?
Check out our strength training protocol.
There's better,
on YouTube.
and that's a good basic one. I think we're going to really add a lot to that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start doing like an exercise of the week, maybe a real short
Sure.
clip or something, so we can have people add to.
Maybe mobility stuff too.
Well, and
We haven't brought that up, but Olivia and I have been eyeballing some mobility stuff.
what the most fun that Carrie and I've been doing for months now is combining strength and mobility.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's a fun workout. It's a hard workout, and it's really don't you think it's helped you out a ton, Carrie? Yeah.
You guys' cabooses are looking a little better.
Well, I mean, they weren't bad to begin with, son.
Hey, I'm just saying, when you're starting with gold, it's hard to.
It's got a little platinum.
What episode was the stress one, Liv?
Episode 4.
4.
4. Wow, an early one. So all these things, I knew that's going to keep coming up. That episode is going to keep coming up in a lot of these things we're doing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I got one comment from YouTube, and then Olivia has some questions.
Okay.
So someone on YouTube, Echomania 2791.
I like it.
They said, question, white belt here, but anytime I roll, my arms become inflamed so bad I can barely move my arms after just a few rounds. And it's not a good soreness, like after a good weightlifting session. I lift 3 to 4 times a week and alternate jiu-jitsu between 3 days, 1 week, and 4 days the next week.
Okay. When you're talking about excessive soreness, I'm already thinking rhabdo. Okay. It could be mild. But
So like
when
he's
you
not
have,
peeing.
it may not
Coca-Cola,
be at that
but-
point.
Yeah.
But when you tax something that much, especially if you're, again, it goes back to that other thing we were talking about. If you just started jiu-jitsu, but now you also have this 3 to 4 day a week lifting program, I would want to say, what are you doing during it? And you're probably, if their arms are smoked, they're probably, like a lot of us, way too tense and really just grip and have death grips.
It's funny you say that because there is, unfortunately, YouTube is plagued with Russian bots, as we know. And one of them happened to do a generic answer to this fella. And it says, I'd say pay attention to the intensity of your grips during those rounds. Not every grip should be a death grip.
Oh,
These bots are getting smarter.
they're actually a smart bot. I will actually, I think I will endorse that bot. Yeah. As long as it's not Nikita.
Chris, what about like electrolyte replacement?
Yeah. So that goes along with it too. Things that predispose you for rhabdo. If you guys haven't listened to our episode on rhabdo, it's a good one to listen to. Make sure you're adequately hydrated, especially electrolytes. Right? We talked about that that was a big part of the episode we talked about in prevention.
Low-hanging fruit, liquid IV, element. These are a couple.
But I would almost guarantee you with that person, even if they don't have like the discolored urine, if we tested their creatine kinase enzymes, probably afterwards they'd probably be up quite a bit, which is a marker for that.
Yeah. It's something, if I can, from a jiu-jitsu perspective for them, something I try to instill in the classes I teach is a lot of the time your grips, check your wrist. They should not be dead stiff. Like your grips, you should be able to kind of move them and have some
That's a great
flexibility to them. Right. If you have these stiff grips, you're probably over gripping, number one, right? And two, you're actually going to impede movement. You're not going to be as quick.
I agree with you. So you're saying there's a happy medium between limp bacon
Yes.
and
Yeah.
stiff wrist.
You can do this. Like I'm actually
You're
kind
doing
of,
tiger claw.
yeah, I can.
Isn't that like a kung fu technique?
Maybe. I do the tiger swipe when I try to open the lapels when it's standing. Whoosh. But you can do this without exerting too much of the forearm, which is essentially holding.
So what Bill's doing is he's actually flexing his fingers, but he's not flexing his wrist down.
Yeah.
And he's not
I can
gripping
be
it.
here, and then I can.
Yeah.
So you can have a nice little hook to the whatever grip you're doing with it. It's a spider grip or monkey paw, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But check your wrists. Kind of Make it so they have some movement to them. The stiffer you are there, especially if you're doing stand up, that's like a judo thing. Is they say if you have stiff wrists in the standing positions, you're making all your movements. One, you're telegraphing hardcore because you're going to be able to feel everything.
That's a great point.
You know, so
that's very much like I remember my first competition at white belt. My forearms were just like as a perfect example of that.
And
I couldn't even move them.
That's probably the biggest thing that we, as upper belts, that you tell lower belts is when you're prepping lower belt, like white belts or even blue belts, or anyone that's going to compete for the first time, is it's going to feel like that you're in a bullfight. People lock their arms out, and you guys are just stiff as can be, and stuff like that. But if you can kind of get a little James Brown in you, you'll be better off with and just practice that in the room. In the training room.
That is very true.
Liv, did you have...
Yeah, I got 2 things.
Uh-oh, here we go.
We're going into this cold.
Yep.
So there's a video that's on Instagram.
I know of him with his...
No.
Oh, go ahead.
So it says, losing 6.4 pounds in 1 hour.
This one.
And... it was sent to me, and someone was curious if this works.
It's a grappler, right?
Legit. I don't know, maybe.
I think he is.
Some sort of jiu-jitsu person. Probably just a normal one. So they use 4 bags of Epsom salt, 2 bottles of green rubbing alcohol, and 1 jar of Abilene. And then they sit in a very hot bath for an hour, but they pour all of that stuff in there and then rub the Abilene on their body.
Yeah.
And then, then they're down by...
Documented at 6 pounds.
Why?
6.5 pounds.
Maybe for a competition if you need a quick...
Yeah. I think he was showing that this is possible, and he did it to show, you don't have to spend hours and hours in a sauna with the sweatsuit and running. And like when we went to Vegas for Master Worlds, there was guys in their gi and then sweatpants and sweatshirts over their gi. 111 jogging outside.
I get it, but we did a whole episode on weight cutting.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But is this possible? Is that
I'm not
real?
saying it's not. Yeah,
Isn't
of
it
course.
rubbing alcohol? That's weird.
You can.
What are those other things doing?
So what the idea is, and you see people doing this all the time. They'll get into a hot bath, and I think Mikey Musamichi talked about this, where then they dry them off.
Well, they would use
they'd wick them off,
credit card to scrape
them off. You
essentially
basically,
squeegee 'em.
because you think about what is sweat? It is our cooling mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? When it's on our skin, we through a liquid medium, we get a much more dispersal of heat as opposed to dry skin. That's why we sweat. When you use things to evaporate that sweat, like a rubbing alcohol, or you're squeegeeing it off, it's serving that purpose, right? So you're dispersing that. You're changing, because sweat will evaporate. But if you put especially rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, have you ever spilled isopropyl alcohol on you? It evaporates really quickly. Yeah. So that's what they're after with that, to kind of pull. So then you'll sweat. Your body's like, oh, that's gone. I got to produce more sweat, which is more water loss, right?
Okay.
Pulling that much water off of you in an hour, I think it's stupid.
Very dangerous.
I didn't mean, of course you can do it. It's not smart though. And anybody that is at that, and you're pulling that much water off, there's consequences.
Right.
Your body's like, what the F?
Sure.
Right. And so you're probably going to set yourself up for performance deficits and things like that, in my opinion.
Side note on weight cutting.
Yeah.
We did a test cut so we've gone over in the Masters World recap what we did for myself on cutting weight. And it worked phenomenally. I had tons of energy, wasn't depleted.
Right.
Came in underweight, 173 pounds when I only needed to be 176 or something like that. So we have a competition coming up, and we have a teammate that was debating on going down to a little bit lower division. So we're like, well, let's do a test and just see what you lose and how you feel. So we did a 4-day, basically the same thing where
no fiber.
Yeah, no fiber, no meat, and just kind of a little, not the total junk foods, but stuff that
Still kind of processed.
Yeah, that's processed. I'm just going to clean them out essentially a little bit.
Yeah.
And he ended up losing 7 pounds in those 4 days.
That's what I'm talking about.
So it's kind of the same, but as an amount lost, but over a
You're not
few,
getting dehydrated.
Yeah, he was still taking in
Exactly. And
the salts and electrolytes.
You're not losing that solely as water weight.
Yeah.
You're losing a lot of that as massive food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
he was, I think, 68, and he got down to 60 and a half.
Well, and the good thing about this upcoming competition is, you can weigh in without the gi and the day before,
Yeah.
which is great.
Which is why we're doing kind of a test. Now, he eats actually quite clean, so, he'll piss off with a burger or something, but it's for the most part, he eats quite clean.
Yeah.
So it did feel he was having some fatigue issues by day 3.
You probably need to up the carb a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he was literally doing like the bread, peanut butter, honey.
And I wouldn't recommend doing it that long before. I would do that like 2 days before.
Okay.
Yeah. I would. You don't have to do it for that long before.
Yeah,
That's why you came in under, by the way.
Gotcha. And we were trying to, we're identifying Friday as a weigh-in day. So we started Tuesday, and then Friday was going to be weigh-in. Then we were going to have him do Saturday morning class and spar hard and
See how he felt.
yeah, exactly.
That would have been a good idea to maybe do Wednesday and Thursday doing that eating
Weigh in
thing.
in the morning and then
Yeah, and instead of starting that extra day, I think a good 48 hours is
Okay.
all you need to clear that out.
cool.
That's great. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I hope people take home that drastic water weight cut is not good.
Yeah.
It's not healthy and it's not sustainable either. So
Okay. One more question. Is it true that you cannot build muscle and lose fat at the same time? For example, if you are in a calorie deficit and are training jiu-jitsu and strength training, can you lose fat while putting on muscle, or does it have to be a bulk and cut process?
no, so it's none of this is all or nothing. But when you talk about when you put yourself in a calorie deficit, like you're not eating what you need to sustain that activity, your body will start to cannibalize muscle. You're not going to get into an anabolic state here. So we talked about this before too, where the idea is, so this is where sleep is super important, and this is where that kind of cyclic carb refeed is important too. Because you have to feed your muscle, but you can still, most of the fat loss is going to take place when you're sleeping at night anyway. It's not like burning calories during your session, right? Through growth hormone and things like that. But you absolutely can build muscle and lose body fat. You absolutely can. But when you put yourself in a calorie deficit and you're not feeding yourself to the amount that your activity necessitates, you are going to start cannibalizing muscle.
And
you're
that's
going to
probably
get
more common.
It is more
which
common.
is why the stereotype is
the skinny fat.
bulk, cut down, build, all that.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I mean, because then you're putting your body through these weird cycles and stuff, and I don't think it's that great to do. I mean, I'm not a bodybuilder, but I can tell you, people always use bodybuilders as, well, they do it. I'm like, yeah, they are not the healthiest people in the world.
That's
let me
like the
tell you.
equivalent of like what do like drag fuel racers do
Yeah,
compared to
sure.
like a normal race car or even just your daily performance car. It's like, well, those guys have to rebuild their engine after every pass.
So yeah, exactly. So that's a very good analogy. But in short, that kind of cyclic thing where when you're not training, you're doing like a protein, fiber, and fat thing, and then after a hard training session, you really get a good protein and a good carb refeed.
Yeah.
That'll help you from getting catabolic. In other words, breaking down the muscle, because it's going to get it. Your body's like, hey, muscle is a very expensive tissue.
Yeah.
Energetically for the body.
Speaking of that, did you see how good my guns looked when you weren't here?
They looked pretty good.
I was sitting in that chair.
I know. This is a magic chair, by the way.
There's something about it.
There is, dude.
You designed this set to make me look like a
And I insisted I sit here.
Gumby. Yes.
I'll sit over there next
That's why
time.
I made it the
Well,
thumbnail.
I mean, in comparison to Nikita, of course your guns look amazing.
That's true when you compare to who I was sitting across from.
Yeah, and that was from Carrie. Give her props for that.
Yes, Carrie applied that insult and called him doughboy. So let the record know that was from Carrie.
And he is starting to look more and more like the ADCC ref I was talking about.
A little bit.
Yeah.
He's in a mix right now of between that guy and Fedor.
Okay.
Yeah. And his brother, Alexander.
Alex, awesome.
Is that all the questions?
Yeah.
You got anything else?
I don't. And you guys just be healthy, be smart with your training.
Yeah. Send
And-
us questions, grappling with a podcast.
And to
gmail.com.
quote Monty Python, I'm not quite dead yet.
You are not quite dead yet. Only in our eyes, only in our dreams. Like, subscribe, comment. We see everything on YouTube. Sometimes I'm slow to respond, or Olivia, or whoever.
It ain't me.
Yeah, it's never. But I might text you a question.
You do.
Yeah, hit us up.
Cool.
See you next time.
Later.